Nearly half of pregnancies among American women are unintended, and about 4 in 10 of these are terminated by abortion. 21% of all pregnancies, excluding miscarriages, end in abortion. At least half of American women will experience an unintended pregnancy by the age of 45. It happens, everybody says it's not going to happen to me, and then it does. But after you've had an abortion, how do you move forward from there? If there is shame or guilt or any of those things, how do you fight it? And I want to tell you right now, there is hope for you. You don't have to stay stuck there. Because what happens after you've done that, and if you struggle with it, it especially starts rooting inside of you and you start getting angry. And that is exactly where Satan wants you. And today we're going to say no more. With me is today a special guest, Ramona Trevino. And she experienced that at a very young age when her parents forced her to have an abortion. And the aftermath did not go so well. Learn how you can have hope after hearing her incredible story. Mona, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you.
Now, you've even written a book about that,
Yes.
and your writer name is I M Dauntless, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But you were forced into an abortion. Were you a Christian at the time?
No.
You were not.
No.
So you didn't, and you did not want it. You were young, 16 years old. You did not want it.
Right.
So, but your parents kind of moved forward. How did that all go?
It was difficult at the time because you're hoping that somebody would support you, and you know deep down inside what's right and what's wrong. We're kind of already instilled with that, I think. And you're hoping that your family will support you, or at least the family of the father of the baby. And the father of the baby's family did support me, but my family just didn't think it would be the right thing to do at the time. And so their decision kind of ruled over.
So you go into an abortion clinic.
It was horrific.
Did you see the sonogram?
Oh, they didn't show us the sonograms at then. That was in 1976. At that time, it was pretty easy to go into anywhere, and that was in Santa Clara County. And we went in, and they had the machines there, and they give
did
you
their
a volume. They did their thing. You hear the noise, you hear that, and
Something you probably
there.
will never forget. No. Afterwards, did you started to resent your parents?
Very much so. And at that time, I had actually just blamed my mother, I guess because she's my mother. And that was hard because we had a very estranged relationship for many years due to that.
Wow.
And that was a difficult thing to go through life with.
Wow, because
Yes.
that's the bitterness that starts taking root, which turns almost into hatred, basically.
Right.
So it just sits there. So here you are. When I've seen from before, while I was in juvenile hall and I met with a girl and we talked, I said, don't do abortion, don't do abortion. Well, somebody came in and said, do an abortion, and she followed through. They said, you're not suited to raise this child. And followed through, and the anger inside of her, what her solution was at the end was, she was so hurt, so upset, and so much guilt. She says, I'm just going to get pregnant to fix it. But does that fix it?
No, that doesn't fix it. What I did, unfortunately, is I ran away from home, and then that started my life of, drinking and masking all the pain and not understanding. I just was beyond hurt and damaged. I felt, how would God ever forgive this? It's murder.
Wow.
And I couldn't forgive myself. If I couldn't forgive myself, I couldn't move on.
Now, did you actually go to somebody that you were able to talk to and say, I am stuck? Is God, you just helped it? It's all hiding, isn't it?
Yes.
Just hiding, the shame causes so much hiding that you're not able to break out of that.
Right, and then what was sad is that I ended up leaving that family that, the father of the baby at the time, and I ended up leaving their care, and they cared very much about me, and they felt very bad that it had led to this decision. And they were kind of my rock at the time because things were dysfunctional at home. And so that was hard because then I just ended up going wherever anyone would take me at the time.
So you
and a lot of drinking.
A lot of drinking.
A lot of drinking.
So what was
Drugs,
the point that you
selling.
realized, I can't go on like this? Or
It
did
took
it take a long time?
Many years of a lot of ups and downs. I was blessed when I was in 1983. I was 23, and I had my daughter, my oldest daughter now, and I didn't think I'd ever be blessed with a child.
Because you feel God is so angry with you, he will not give you a second chance. Is that what it is?
And I had gotten to know the Lord in between that, and so I had gotten, saved and went through that salvation process, but in the back of my mind, I still had that there. Even though he was supposed to carry all those things, I still had never told anybody or dealt with that pain.
Wow.
The scar
Right.
of how to fix that. I just put Band-Aids on it.
So you went from relationship to relationship, and
Awful.
one of those turned really, really bad.
Several of them turned really bad. The latest one was the worst one. That turned into a domestic type of a thing where I ended up being...
Did you know that when you started dating him?
No.
So it all seems perfect and innocent. You get into the relationship, and then...
The alcoholism took over.
And then abuse, verbal abuse first, smacked around.
But see, I had little self-worth. I wasn't valuable to anybody, nor myself.
Does that mean that when you're in that stage of mind that you accept what is being done
Yes.
to you? So no hope at all.
Right.
Just going from relationship to relationship. You're in this relationship, he is alcoholic, then it gets violent. What happened?
Well, at that particular time, I had just had enough. And I was already crying out to God to get me out of the situation that I had gotten into. And I was already now in my late 40s, 50s. But, I needed help, and it turned violent, and I had to call 911. And they had to come. And
What was the violence that actually took place at that moment?
it was an argument over not going to a fast food restaurant. And then it was like, you need to leave. And I said, okay. And I went to go pack my bag, and he came in the room, you're not taking that bag, and you stupid this and that. And the words started coming out, and he grabbed the bag, emptied my things, and hit me over the head. And I said, that's it. And so I called 911, and then I saw rage in his eyes, and I knew something was going to happen worse than I could that I could handle at the time. And so I ran into the bathroom, locked myself in the door.
Were you actually afraid for your life that moment?
Oh, yes.
Wow.
I'd never seen those kind of eyes.
Hold on to that thought right now. She was afraid. She was not sure if she was going to get out of there alive. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
Hi, I'm Thomas with Pray and Obey, and I really want to recommend that you spend the time watching Barb's TV. Barb TV is a hands-on example of how other people have defeated situations in their life that have held others back. These people have walked with God and have found that His answers always work. So I highly recommend that you watch Barb TV. I believe that you will see things where it will speak to you directly, and God will give you examples of how you can change your life for the better. Barb TV is a TV show that shows you examples of victories in their lives. So again, I highly recommend that you would spend the time and watch Barb TV. It is done on a weekly situation, and it is worth watching. God bless you, and thank you very much.
1 in 5 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. On a typical day, there are more than 20,000 phone calls placed to domestic violence hotlines, and this is nationwide. It's out there, there's a lot of violence, and my question would be the first, where did that originate? Where did that start? With my special guest right now, Ramona Trevino, she was one where her original problem started with a forced abortion that she did not want, even if her parents did not see any other way out. But how do you overcome those wounded hearts not to get to that violent point? And what hope is there when it has already happened and that wound is inside of you right now? Mona, you were there, you were locked up in the bathroom, you saw the rage in him, a rage that I believe was probably a demon. It was more intense than ever before, and you know it is bad. How were you able to call 911?
Well, luckily I was able to get to my phone, and not every woman has that opportunity. I find that out later. And I had my phone, and so I was able to call 911. They asked me to stay on the phone. I kept screaming at them for them to hurry because I knew he was coming towards the bathroom door. And then at that point, then he's banging on the door, and they can hear it, and they're yelling at me not to hang up the phone.
Oh.
So it was pretty intense until the door got kicked down, and I didn't know what to do. And now I can hear the sirens, but now the door's down. And so now I'm screaming. And when he came into the bathroom, then he grabbed a brush, pulled my phone, hit me on the head, and because I feel God was able to get me out of there, he threw the phone into the toilet. And when he did that and bent down, I ran for my life out into the street, and it was raining, and by then the house was surrounded by the police.
Were they drawn?
The guns were drawn.
The guns.
He wouldn't come out. He barricaded himself in the home for a good, probably we were out there a good 45 minutes to an hour.
Wow. Wow, this must have gotten your attention. So the little value you had and the embarrassment even got worse. Now it's known that those that are domestically, abused with violence and all that stuff, it is so common for those to go back 7 times before they're finally free.
That's
Were
hard.
you one of those?
Yes, I was. In writing the book and thinking back and how God just kind of revealed everything and how it happened, you kind of wonder, and you always hear people say, well, why do you keep going back? But you go back because you have no other way of understanding. You don't have any value. And even though I did have people that tell me I was valuable in God, I didn't understand fully how much he loved me.
But that value, wasn't there a grandfather that had been molesting you already? Were you still in hiding about that at the time?
Yes, and that all came out after writing. God had me sit down, and I was trying to figure out, how did this all happen? Like, where did all this come from? Where did I lose my innocence of being that little girl? And where did this little girl get lost? And that's when I realized that there was incest and molestation from my mother's father's side. And that was that was the piece that I hadn't put together
That
yet.
was the part why you couldn't get healing because it had been buried?
That was the piece.
So here you are. Now, one of the hardest things to do would be to go to your mom or your dad and say, your dad did.
Yes.
Did you actually do that?
Yes, we did that. Let's see, I had to do that in my teen years. Well, actually, it was probably almost 20 at that time. So the abortion had already happened. I had already left home. I had still been struggling in and out, kind of thinking things of what happened. And then we approached her and let her know my mom and dad were already separated. And it was kind of, I'm sure she was in shock.
Did she believe you?
I think she did. I think she did the best that she could at the time, not knowing the Lord and none of us really living in a Christ type of environment.
Right,
that wasn't
right.
there. I think I probably felt like I should have got more empathy.
Mm-hmm. Well, she's probably in such shock. She doesn't.
I'm sure
and
she was.
It's just, are you just saying this to get attention,
I'm
or
sure
is this
she was.
real? But who would make something like that up? You know?
Can't. And then after that happened, I just kind of left, and I always stay close to my father. And then that's when things started. Little pieces would come together, little bits of memory flashes, and then it came to be where we actually found out that there were other people in the family that the same thing had happened to them, the same age group.
Wow.
And then it's kind of trying to figure out, how did it happen?
Yeah. How was this level? Nobody would expect or suspect or any of that.
Right. So then after telling them, I kind of squashed it, and I kept squashing it. And you just kind of live behind that door, And so I tried to be an overachiever with work and do really well in work and hide behind.
People pleaser. Mm-hmm. Called a people pleaser. Mm-hmm. So here you're pleasing people. You're away from your boyfriend now. You do not go back, I hope.
Well, this last situation happened about 7 years ago.
Wow, that's pretty fresh.
So there was a
still.
lot of lot of things in between.
Did you go
men.
back to him after he finally threatened your life?
No, that was finally it. Because at that time, with this last situation, I finally had enough, and I actually had reached out to an organization in Hollister called Community Solutions.
So what happened to him?
That was really hard to watch. he ended up being, couldn't speak because of restraining orders, and it took a long time before I could even see or talk to him. And sometimes we still want to see that person after they hurt us that bad to ask them why they did that. And so I did that, and I shouldn't have. And I made the phone call, and I blocked the number, but I still called him. And then it was, started talking to him more, but I had to hide it.
And he wanted you back.
Of course he did. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll never do that. But by then I was already going to church again.
You got to
I
know
was
God
already,
in a new level.
and I told him I'm in a completely different place now.
Right.
I'm not going to go back to that. I'm here if you need me. And I actually got to lead him in the Lord's Prayer after. And within a year, he died.
Wow.
It was really hard. We found him in his house, and he died peacefully in his bathtub. And he was fully clothed with blood all over the house. So we don't know what happened, but that was a hard time too.
Yeah, because you're like, if I could have made a difference or all that stuff. And you know that things happen, but is it right to blame yourself when you finally get free? Everybody's responsible for themselves. Stay tuned. There's more. Jesus says in the Bible in John 10:10 that the thief comes to steal, but Jesus wants to give you the abundant life. And what we have created for you is a brand new series which is called Power Up. And in that Power Up, the first part is to forgive and thrive. The second part is the power of your words. The third part is to hear God's voice. And the fourth part is to pray with results. And I can tell you, when you start applying this to your life, it will transform your life. The workshops, we want to work with you. We want to come to your area. And we want to bless you what God has blessed us with, so you too can start living in that abundant life. Not just for a little bit, but for 100%. So will you contact us to find out more about this? Our number is 855-515-5550, or go to our website, barbtv.org. It will change your life. 70% of adults in the US have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their lives. Close to 20% of these people go on to develop PTSD. As of today, that equates to approximately 44.7 million people who were or are struggling with PTSD. The annual cost to society of anxiety disorders is estimated to be significantly over $42.3 billion, often due to this misdiagnosis and under-treatment. And the sad part is my daughter has PTSD, and you know, anybody that even gets close to her neck, she completely cannot handle that because of what has happened to her. And it's very traumatic, and how do you overcome that? How do you actually move on from the past when you have PTSD and you cannot erase the past? And Mona, you wrote a book about that. You have an incredible book saying Free at Last. Now, why do you have it as the author, being you, I M Dauntless?
Well, when I finally surrendered to the fact that I was going to write a book, because I didn't want to write a book, but it just happened that God said, you're going to write a book, and you're going to take all these things that have happened, and you're going to write something, and I'm going to use all those things for the good. I didn't understand how all those things could be used.
And this is your book right here, The Struggle. Free at Last, the struggle to be good enough. Does that go all the way back because of what happened with your grandfather and with the abortion?
Yes, and with many things. And so Free at Last was actually the first college assignment I had done in a women's writing class, and it was just notes that I had written up until I was 35, just things that I had written, and I just tucked it away, and then I would just kind of add things after I'd be in a relationship. It went south, and then I'd type in on it like, whoa, I'm going to learn from that one, right?
Right.
I won't do that again.
So in your book, it tells your story, and it helps the writer or the reader to understand there's hope.
Definitely there's hope. And one of the things that I realized in writing the book, I Am Dauntless was just a creative way of telling people that I am courageous.
Wow.
And I M Dauntless was the author name that we took on because at that time, in writing it a couple years ago, I still wasn't sure if I wanted to be Ramona Trevino writing the story. And so God let me have a creative way of taking that to a place where in the book I introduced my character Emily. And Emily takes you on some journeys that a lot of women go through. And God just showed me these are things you need to write about.
Wow.
And so being as transparent as I could within the story, Emily goes through a lot of the things that I went through.
And you explain the feelings, the smells, the whole thing that goes with it.
Everything that goes
now,
with it.
if you know, are you completely free from PTSD today?
Yes.
What does it take to get free?
I would have to say that me writing the book was my healing point because what God did was I had to literally sit in front of my computer and ask him what words to write. And I would pray and he would remind me of things and then I'd have to write with them and deal with them. So now everything's up on the surface because for years I stuffed it.
Now, knowing God, I have a feeling that he will work through you when you're working through that story of forgiving.
Yes, I had to forgive everyone.
Is that part of the process?
That was part of the process, and even to the point to where I even reached out to a few of the men that I had been with to ask them for forgiveness because I was not leading a godly life either. It wasn't all their fault either. They didn't know that I had accepted Christ from before. And so I had to forgive them, and they were kind of blown away when I did that, but they accepted it, and then they're like blown away, like, whoa, she must really be doing this the right way. And then I had to talk to my parents and let them know what I was doing and why. But
how did they deal with that when you did that moment?
I think that they saw the shine in me and just the idea of it, that they knew it was time.
Yeah.
They knew it was time. They had seen me hurt so many years and just let go of so many things, and they just knew that there was more to things. And luckily also my parents both know the Lord now. And so that helped, and my daughters do too. And so then it's just about forgiving myself.
Isn't that one of the hardest
That was the
ones
hardest
to
thing.
do? How were you able to actually forgive yourself?
I had to literally get on my knees and ask God, for forgiveness for not accepting his forgiveness. Because I had to
It's almost like
understand.
leaving Jesus hanging on that cross, saying you're not good enough to get down because I cannot forgive what I have done to myself.
And I did not feel good enough for him. And he's like, what's wrong with you? You are exactly the way I intended you to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that was the hardest part, forgiving myself. And now it's about letting women read my story, even men, and they pick it up and they're just like blown away because they can't even imagine that I was that person back then and that I have survived and now who I am today.
Now, if there's one fast word that you could advise somebody who is where you used to be, what would that be?
Get help.
Get out. I knew you were going to say that.
Get help.
Out and get help. And you're not making it up, right?
No.
You're not making it up.
And if someone doesn't listen to you or believe you, find someone else.
Yeah, and we want to be that other person for you. We want to connect with you. Call us or go to a hotline, 855-515-5550, or our website, barbtv.org. But don't stay stuck. You are more valuable than that. And that's what you finally figured out. Mona, I'd like to give you a copy of my book, Ransomed, Loving Yourself from the Inside. And if anybody wants to get a hold of you, do you have a website?
I do. It's dauntlesswriter.com.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming to the show and being willing to show how people can be free from PTSD.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you might be looking at me right now and saying, Barbara, she says the way to get rid of PTSD is to write it out and to start forgiving. And I cannot do that after what has been done to me. And I can relate, and definitely Mona can relate. But I want to tell you, if you forgive, it doesn't just set them free, it sets you free. and you no longer decide to judge that person, but you start trusting God. And we have made a booklet for you to help you how to do that. It's a 10-step plan. It's a free download on our website, actually. So go to barbtv.org or call us 855-515-5550. Request a copy. We'll be glad to give that to you. And we want you not to be stuck for years, but to walk free, just like Mona did. Again, 855-515-5550, or go to barbtv.org. And just know this, when God is in it, nothing is impossible. When I was supposed to forgive and could not do it, when I finally, in obedience, said, God, help me to forgive me, I literally said, Barbara, I forgive you for blah, blah, blah. And when I was finally able to do that, it set me free in a way that I never had to carry that huge load of luggage of unforgiveness anymore, and it released. God wants to do that for you. Jesus came to earth. He died on a cross so you can live in freedom and no longer have to be held in captivity by the devil. 855-515-5550. God loves you, and so do I. According to the March of Dimes, nearly 60% of pregnancies in the US are unplanned. So for you to do that was one of the most selfless things you could have done to give this child a better life, basically. That's what you chose.
Yeah.
I'm just very thankful that she was kind enough to give me an opportunity to have a privileged life by doing the selfless thing of giving me up at a young age, knowing that she wasn't in the best position to care for me.
She's always expressed thankfulness and love toward me, but to say this in front of everybody like that, she was not one so much to share the story, at least in the past. And I just think she's come a long way too.
Wow. Stay tuned. You want to hear this.